You know that classic image, right? Three kings, a super bright star, a little manger. But the story of the Epiphany, it's so much more than what you see on a Christmas card. It's kind of like a detective story, a bit of a political thriller, and really, it's the payoff to a promise that was 1,000 years in the making. So today, let's unpack the real story behind that star.
Okay, let's jump right in with the one question that kicks this whole thing off. Think about it. A group of foreign travelers shows up in the capital, Jerusalem, and asks this one question. It basically turns a whole kingdom upside down and starts to unravel a mystery connecting ancient history to a world-changing event.
So, to really get why a single star could cause such a huge stir, we first have to understand the darkness it was about to break through. This wasn't just any old time. It was an age filled with this deep sense of longing and, expectation.
Let's rewind a few centuries before our Magi even show up. Picture Jerusalem. The people were supposed to have this big, triumphant return from exile. But the reality? It was a mess. There was conflict, discouragement, and the rebuilding of their great temple had ground to a halt. The mood was, to put it mildly, bleak.
And right into the middle of all this gloom, the prophet Isaiah starts speaking. He introduces this incredibly powerful idea, this metaphor of a divine light. Now, he's not talking about a candle or a lamp. He's making this huge promise that God's own glory is going to shine on the city, turning it into this beacon of hope that would literally draw all the nations out of their own darkness.
So you see, the Magi showing up wasn't some random out-of-the-blue thing. Not at all. It was actually the climax of a story that started 1,000 years before, with a promise God made to King David, a promise of a kingdom that would last forever. And that hope was kept alive for centuries.
All right, and this is where the story takes a really interesting turn. This ancient promise, which for so long seemed to be for just one nation, is suddenly revealed to be a plan for the entire world.
St. Paul calls this whole unfolding plan a mystery. But, and this is super important, when he says mystery, he doesn't mean a whodunit that you can't solve. For him, a mystery is a divine purpose, this grand design that God has been patiently revealing to humanity piece by piece over generations. And with Christ, a huge, critical piece of that puzzle was finally clicking into place for everyone to see.
For centuries, the understanding was pretty straightforward. God's plan for saving the world was going to work primarily through the people of Israel. They were the chosen ones, the witnesses, the instrument God would use to act in history.
But then, the Epiphany happens, and it's this massive turning point. The revelation of Christ makes it crystal clear that the plan was always meant to be universal. The heritage, the promise, the salvation, it was for everyone, from every single background and every single nation on earth.
And this idea wasn't totally new. The clues were there all along, threaded through the ancient prophecies. Isaiah predicted that nations would travel towards Jerusalem's light. The Psalms talked about kings from faraway lands bringing gifts. And now, here come the Magi, foreigners, non-Jews, who see a light, and they act on it, making this universal hope totally real.
Okay, so this brings us right back to Jerusalem, to the heart of the drama. The Magi have arrived, they've asked their explosive question, and now everybody has to react. And their reactions tell us everything.
And the contrast here is just, wow. It's night and day. You've got the Magi who see a sign in the sky and travel hundreds of miles to find the truth. Then you have the scribes, the local experts who know the prophecies inside and out, but they don't even bother to walk down the road to check. And King Herod? Well, for him, this isn't good news. It's a direct threat to his power.
And this whole scene just throws this massive question right in our faces, doesn't it? The scribes had all the information, all the data. But it was the Magi, the ones who were actually searching, who got to have the encounter. It really forces us to ask, what's the point of knowing everything if you don't have the courage to do something with it?
And here's a wild little historical footnote for you. We can actually date this event pretty accurately, and it's all thanks to King Herod. We know from historical records that he died in 4 BC, so his paranoid plot to get rid of all the toddlers in Bethlehem suggests Jesus was likely born around 6 or 5 BC. Turns out, a monk way back in the 6th century made a tiny miscalculation when he was setting up our modern calendar, so that's why our timeline is a little bit off.
So when you pull it all together, you realize this familiar story is actually incredibly deep. It's this one moment where 1,000 years of history and prophecy finally collide with a brand new reality. It's the moment that promise of light, which was kept alive in darkness for one people for so long, finally broke through for the entire world to see.
And that leaves us with one last thing to chew on.
The star, yeah, it pointed the way. But maybe the true epiphany, the real shining light in this story, isn't just about finding the answer. Maybe it's about having the hope and the courage to start the search in the first place.